Welcome to COAERS. My name is Russell Nash. I'm the Deputy Executive Director here at COAERS, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 2024 Member Summit. We are thrilled to have you here. This is our new COAERS headquarters. So you are the first inaugural group to sit in the conference room and help us make this event a wonderful time today. We have redesigned our event. This is a conference style event, so you will have 4 sessions that you can attend today as we go through the afternoon. We hope that today's agenda will be edifying to you. You should be able to get some insights, whether you're planning for retirement or you're in retirement. So everybody along the journey should have something for them today. First off, I'd like to recognize our COAERS leaders. COAERS is governed by an 11-member board of trustees who provide policy oversight and set guidelines for the organization. And many of them are here today and will share their insights with you. And so I'd like to acknowledge all of our members, and I'll have the ones that are in attendance stand as I recognize them. Our first is Ms. Louise Xiao Yu. She is our board chair for the board of trustees. She's an active elected member. Brad Sinclair is our vice chair, another active elected member. Mr. Michael Benson is with us today. He's a retired elected member. Mike, stand. Dr. Kelly Crook is here as well, a council-appointed citizen member. Anthony D. Ross Sr. is here, our retired elected member. Also, Teresa Nowak is here, an active elected member. Ms. Diana Thomas, city manager designee. Mr. Ed Vanino is the CFO for the city, not present here today. And Dr. Michael Granoff is a board-appointed citizen, not present today. Mr. Dick Levine is here today, council-appointed citizen. And Councilmember Leslie Poole is with us today. Thank you all for your service. So let's begin our program today. Our first session today is led by Mr. Chris Hansen. He's going to be discussing the value of our defined benefit plan. Chris has a vast knowledge of pension issues, both statewide and nationwide, as the former director of the PRB and now with COAERS 10 years. Please help me welcome Mr. Chris Hansen. Thank you.
Russell, it's great to see this room finally in action. We're really excited to welcome everybody to 4700. And let me just start off by thanking you for your service to the city of Austin. It's all of you that make this a great place for all of us to live. So thank you very much. I'm going to spend a little bit of time today opening up before we get into a little bit more details about the specifics of the COAERS benefit, talking about retirement options in general. And specifically what's unique and valuable about the defined benefit that the city of Austin offers to all of us. So to do that, I'm going to speak a little bit about the different types of retirement plans that employers offer and some of the historical trends that we've seen in those offerings. That naturally leads into the disappearance of the defined benefit plan from the private sector. And there are some reasons for that. Then I'm going to speak a little bit more about what makes the defined benefit that we all share unique. Then I'm going to pivot to a little bit about what's going on with retirement options today and the steps that need to be taken to preserve this amazing benefit. And then conclude with a little bit about why this is an important and valuable benefit for all of us. So this just a second here. All right, so there are traditionally 3 forms of retirement benefits that employers offer. The one that most people are familiar with is the defined benefit plan. And that is a retirement income annuity that is derived from a multiplier of a member's final average salary calculation and their length of service. This has historically kind of been the traditional pension. When you think back to like the 1950s and 60s, that's what people generally had because that was the one offering that was available to people in the workforce. A few decades ago, a gentleman created the 401k and the advent of the defined contribution plan. The defined contribution plan is exactly as it sounds. The benefit is defined by the contributions in the retirement account. Those contributions are made up of either employee and or employer deposits into that, along with the investment income that's generated from that. And then lastly, a recent advent in the retirement options is the cash balance plan, also known as the hybrid plan. It's known as that because it takes elements of both the defined benefit and the defined contribution plan and combines them. So it starts off similar to a defined contribution plan, where the employer and or the employee contribute to an account. That account then usually earns an interest credit. Typically, there is a floor and a ceiling that accumulates over the lifetime of the employee's tenure. And then at retirement, the actuary annuitizes and establishes a lifetime benefit. So a cash balance plan does have a lifetime benefit, but it is based on the contributions and income to the account of the employee. Again, that's why it's known as the hybrid plan. Now, defined benefit plans go back actually centuries. The first one that we could track in the United States goes back to the American Revolutionary War, and a lot of the early ones were for the military. The defined contribution and cash balance plans are really creations of the last few decades. And as we think about those trends, looking back and what we've seen here in the United States is back in the 1970s, the vast majority of workers had an opportunity to participate in a defined benefit plan. We've broken this out by state and local employees and private sector employees. So you can see in 1975, nearly 100% of public sector employees had the option to participate in a defined benefit plan. Private sector employees at a very high level, 73% were also participating in a defined benefit plan. Now you can see over time that the private sector has begun to really cut back on the offering of defined benefit plans. Fast forward 30 years to 2005, only half as many employees in the private sector had access to a defined benefit plan. Fast forward to 2022, and that's been cut even further, down to 15% of the private sector workforce has access to a defined benefit plan. Now you can see on the state and local side, there has been a gradual decline in that offering, and I'll speak to that a little bit later in the presentation. But generally, the vast majority of state and local workers do have access to a defined benefit plan. Now, when we think about that, what does that mean in terms of numbers? Well, based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics recently, there's about 167 million Americans in the workforce. About 70% of those are in the private sector. So if you take that 15%, you end up with about 17.5 million workers that have access to a defined benefit plan. Compare that with state and local workforce, which is a much smaller percentage of that 167 million. It's about 10.9, just under 11%. But of that, because it's 88%, 16 million state and local government workers have access to a defined benefit plan. So it's pretty similar in terms of numbers, even though there's a significantly larger percentage of employees in the private sector. Now, why is that happening? Why are defined benefit plans not available in the private sector? There's a few reasons why. A lot of this, there's usually a catalyst for something, and folks who've studied, and this has become kind of, I think, a case study in business schools, the Studebaker-Packard pension collapse of 1963. If you're not familiar, Studebaker-Packard made cars. It was a car manufacturing facility in South Bend, Indiana, actually. One day in 1963, employees showed up to their workplace, and they were told that they no longer had a place to work. It's about 5,000 employees who were suddenly out of a job. But in addition to that, what they also found out was that they were closing and shutting down the pension plan. That they were not going to honor the promises, quote unquote, that were made to those employees. Now, folks who had already retired, who were retirement eligible, were able to get a pension. But that left about 4,000 younger workers who suddenly had nothing available. They had been promised a benefit, and it was gone. Now, this obviously caught the attention of Congress, and like many things in this country, it took about 10 years for them to actually pass legislation to address this. The enactment of the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, otherwise known as ERISA, in 1974, was established to help put safeguards around private sector defined benefit plans. Unfortunately, several of the administrative rules in ERISA created, from a corporate point of view, administrative burdens and costs. Costs such as premiums paid to the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, as well as reporting requirements, and other administrative fees used to fund the staff of ERISA. So this created an additional hurdle for private sector defined benefit plans. Fast forward to 1980 and the advent of the 401k. This has been in the news a lot recently that the gentleman who actually introduced the 401k never really intended it to be a sole source of retirement income. It was actually designed as a way for folks to save money pre-tax. And when this was originally pitched to his first client, they balked at it because they said, well, Congress is going to realize that they're losing out on tax revenue and they're going to repeal 401k. That never happened. And eventually it became enacted in his company, the Johnson Company, and it's grown over time. Companies, because they didn't want to deal with the administrative burden of ERISA, and they had another way to offer pre-tax retirement savings, began moving towards 401k offerings. Then you combine that with the financial reporting requirements of FASB, the Financial Accounting Standards Board, which is the private sector version of GASB. Those reporting requirements are much more conservative and onerous than in the governmental sector. There's a reason for that. Companies are bought and sold. Studebaker went bankrupt in that plant. So the reporting requirements are more stringent and they require more conservative pension estimates and funding. So you combine all of that, and in the private sector, the defined benefit became less appealing for companies to offer. Then you have the 401k, which, although was not intended to be the sole source of retirement income, was a way for companies to offer something, but not have to meet the administrative burdens of ERISA and FASB. So that is, in a nutshell, what's led to this disappearance of defined benefit plans from the private sector. So I'm going to pivot now and talk a little bit about what makes the defined benefit so unique. As we talked about earlier when I defined what the defined benefit plan was, the way your benefit is calculated is different than other plans. It's a multiplier with a combination of your final average salary and your length of service. It's not based on the amount that you contribute. Now, the amount that we all contribute as employees goes to fund the defined benefit, as does the employer contribution, as well as the investment income. But when you retire, it's not based on the amount of money that's in your account. Additionally, each individual's retirement benefit is not impacted by the volatility of financial markets. I'm going to give you an example of how that happened in 2008, a little bit. Additionally, your benefit is guaranteed for life. You cannot outlive your retirement benefit. It will be there for you the rest of your life. Additionally, on average, defined benefit plans offer a higher benefit than you would get in a defined contribution plan. And lastly, they're more cost efficient. The actual cost to achieve the same level of benefit over your lifetime, and I'll show you a graph on this, is significantly higher in a defined contribution plan. So we talked a little bit about the defined benefit calculation, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this chart. But it is unique because it's not based on the amount of money that you contribute. It's actually based on your final average salary, your length of service, and the multiplier that the pension system has. This allows the individual to not be impacted by market volatility. And this is really important because folks who rely on a 401k are really subject to the whims of the markets. Take the global financial crisis, for instance. Studies have shown that about $2.8 trillion of 401k assets were lost in 2008. That is a significant number. That's 32%. So folks who had 401ks saw their value decline by almost 1/3 in a single year. So if they were preparing to retire in 2009, that income that they were looking at was significantly reduced. There was a study done by the Employment Benefit Research Institute that estimated the time it took for individuals to recoup those losses on average was 3 to 5 years. But in kind of the outlier event, it could take individuals up to 7 to 10 years to get that money back. Why was that? Why was that so long? What they also found is that many folks who had 401ks had significantly higher exposure to stocks, which were the largest down component of the 2008 market collapse. Approximately 25% of folks who had 401ks aged 56 to 65 had more than 90% of their 401ks in equities. Another 40% had 70 to 90% in equities. So if you think about folks who are at that retirement age, preparing for retirement, they had much more in equities, which were down anywhere from 30 to 40% that year. Typically, folks, as they get closer to retirement in a 401k, move those assets to less risky investments, but that was not the case in 2008. So the impact was significant. This is not the case for people in a defined benefit plan. Your benefit is not reduced when markets go down. Another very important component of a defined benefit plan is you cannot outlive your benefit. And this is a recent chart put out by Vanguard, and they looked at the average 401k balance by age. In the middle column, you'll see the average balance. I want to draw your attention more to the median. I think the average is skewed by your really high wealth individuals. But if you look at that median account balance for folks 55 to 64 of just over $87,500, and think about trying to extend that over the life of your retirement. That's going to be very difficult to do. And so a lot of Americans are not well positioned to retire if they're relying on their 401k. That's not the case in a defined benefit. Your benefit is guaranteed for life and you will not outlive it. Another fact that we found through studies, and this is a study done by our new neighbor, Texas Teachers Retirement System, that outcomes tend to be significantly better in defined benefit plans than defined contribution plans. What they did is they ran a Monte Carlo simulation and they examined a range of options of people running their own individually directed retirement accounts, then compared it to the Texas Teachers Benefit. What they found was, on average, approximately 8% of TRS participants would actually end up with a better benefit. There are folks who just are better at picking stocks or do better managing their money. We all know folks like that. But what's really compelling about this is obviously 92% would be lower. But if you look at those red bars, nearly 2/3 of TRS participants would have a significantly lower benefit if they were managing their own accounts, approximately 38% less. So when you retire, the value of your benefit is not nearly the same as it would be in a defined benefit plan. Another way to look at that, this was a study done by the National Institute on Retirement Security. They looked at what would it take if you take an average defined benefit plan and you take the cost of that plan as a percentage of payroll. And then you say, how do you generate the same value in retirement through an individually directed 401k? What they found is it takes twice as much money. So for every dollar you would put into a defined benefit plan, you would need to put $2 in to a defined contribution plan. There's three primary drivers for that increase in cost. The first is in a 401k, you don't benefit from the collective longevity pool. Defined benefit plans, there's a range of folks. We've got folks who just started with a city who are 18 to 21 years old, let's say, and folks who are approaching, 100 years old who are drawing their benefit. We have the ability to pool that longevity risk. In an individual directed 401k, you have to manage that yourself. And that creates a cost. To make sure that you have enough money throughout your lifetime of retirement, you have to put more money in. Additionally, individually directed 401ks don't have access to the same asset classes that defined benefit plans do. So that is an impact in terms of the ability to earn higher returns. And then finally, what they found is that as folks move into retirement, they tend to move to retail investment advisors, which increase the costs of managing their money, which is a drag on those returns. So as they're living in retirement, they're earning less than a defined benefit plan would. You put all that together, and essentially, it would cost twice as much to get the same benefit out of a defined contribution plan. So hopefully that gives you a sense of why this defined benefit is so unique and so important to all of us here. In doing this research, I came across an interesting slide. It's a little bit depressing, I hate to say, when we think about retirement options across the United States. I think you've probably all seen the news where it talks about, is there a retirement crisis here in this country? I think this slide goes to show that the vast majority of people in the workforce, more than 50%, do not have access to any employer-offered retirement plan. That's not just a defined benefit, that's a 401k or a cash balance plan. That is a significant number of people in the workforce that don't have anything. They have to rely solely on Social Security and their own retirement savings. And so, again, when we think about the distribution of retirement offerings, the defined benefit plan is really unique, and it's becoming more and more so unique in the public sector. What we found over the last couple decades is that many state and local governments are moving towards cash balance plans. The dot-com bubble of the early 2000s, combined with the global financial crisis, has led several employers in the public sector to open cash balance plans for new employees. This is a trend that I think is going to continue to grow. And obviously there are groups out there in the United States that are, I guess, say the least, anti-defined benefit. And so they've, for a long time, and during my time at the Pension Review Board, really focused on defined contribution plans. It's really difficult to convert a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan. It's a lot easier to convert a defined benefit plan to a cash balance plan. So that's what we're seeing in the public sector as they're pushing those policy changes through, is the conversion of defined benefit plans for new hires to cash balance plans. Now, we talked a little bit about how a defined benefit plan inoculates all of us from market volatility. Unfortunately, it does not inoculate the trust fund. And so ultimately, we do have to occasionally make changes to ensure collectively that retirement income is guaranteed for life, that it's there. Each and every one of you sitting in this room knows when you retire, that benefit is there and it'll be there for your lifetime. And if you choose a beneficiary, it'll be there for their lifetime. A lot of our peers across the state of Texas, plans in Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, our peer system here in Austin, the Austin Police Retirement System, and most recently COAERS, have made legislative changes to their retirement system. This isn't just limited to Texas. Across the nation, plan administrators and their sponsors who want to preserve that defined benefit have taken steps. Now, those steps have included increasing the employee contribution rate, increasing the employer contribution rate, as well as making changes to the actual benefit policies themselves. This is done to protect the value of the defined benefit. Offering such a unique benefit occasionally takes sacrifices by the collective group, but as we've talked about, it's such a unique benefit, and the guarantee of that income for the remainder of our lifetime is worth it. So I'm going to wrap up here and just speak about this unique benefit. One of the great things about working at COAERS is knowing that for everybody who works at the city, we're here to make sure that your promised benefit is there when you retire. And it'll be there for the remainder of your life and your beneficiary's life. It's not impacted by financial swings in the market. You don't have to worry if there's a major decline in the stock market that your retirement benefit is going to change. And ultimately, it provides all of the members of COAERS, and we really appreciate the city being such a supporter of the defined benefit, a strong foundation to enter retirement. So that concludes my remarks and just kind of teeing up what's unique about the defined benefit. And again, I want to thank everybody for their service to the city of Austin. It's an honor to work at COAERS on your behalf, and I really appreciate your service to make this city so great. I'm going to turn it back over to Russell.
We also have more insights from Dr. Kelly Crook, a trustee on the Board of Trustees. Kelly, would you like to chime in on the conversation?
Okay. Thank you. Shorter than everybody here. Hi, everyone. Wow, lots of people here. Thank you so much for allowing me to kind of wrap up what Chris said and say a few words to you. I myself am a retiree in the retirement system, a recent retiree. And one thing that you will notice, those of you who retire, is that all of a sudden your Yahoo newsfeed is like filled with stories about retirement. AI at its best. Every third story is will you have enough money? How much money does it take? And when should you retire? And all of this kind of stuff. And of course, you read them, and the first thing you think is, where were these when I was 30? They were never in my feed. And then the second thing you think is, I can't wait to read the comments. And so when you get to the comments, Tommy's like, preach. It's so bad to see everybody posting, what happened to them in 2008, and all of my money went, and now I'm gonna have to work forever. And then every now and then somebody will post, hey, I've got a defined benefit pension, and, I may have lost some money in 2008, but not gonna lose my house, or, I'm not worried about health, prior costs, taking everything. And so the first thing I want you to take away is, what? Take heart, stay positive. You've got an excellent foundation. You've got choices. If you want to keep working, keep working. But if you don't, you've got that foundation that's going to keep these apocalyptic things from happening to you and your family. Probably the next thing I want to talk about is stay informed. Everybody's retirement is completely different. You have different needs, you have different families. Nobody is there that lays it all out for you. And you've got so many questions. When should I retire? I'm eligible, but should I hang on? How much is my benefit going to be? What about taxes or insurance? Luckily here at COAERS, and you're going to hear more about it from Catherine when she comes up next, you have a wonderful team of customer service specialists. Please utilize them. Ask them these questions. Don't try to go it alone. Because even people that serve on retirement boards and do this for a living make mistakes when they didn't look into the right thing to do at the right time. So that's the other thing. The third thing I want you to take away from this scary, scary presentation is you've got to stick together. 73% down to 15%. That's not a very long period of time. Most of us were around in 1973. That's a huge change. And 88%, the public pension plan, public sector employees getting a pension, that's no longer guaranteed. New state of Texas employees do not get a defined benefit pension. All of the things that we used to tell when I was a teacher, get a state job, go to work for these people. I don't know. I gotta reconsider now because it's just not the same thing. And part of it is, it's a collective mindset, a defined benefit. It's not an individual one. You've got older and retired people over here, and they are absolutely dependent on younger current workers paying those premiums and paying into that system to keep it whole. And, since I don't work for the city and I'm volunteer, I can talk about the fact that you have politicians now that are trying to drive that wedge. They're trying to divide those two groups and make it to where they can drive that wedge into it, and the support for defined benefit will collapse. If this side or this side starts worrying too much about what their wants are and what they want out of the plan rather than what needs to be done as a group, it's not going to survive. So please stay informed. Please vote for candidates that support defined benefit contribution plans. And thank you very, very much for being here today and learning this information and letting me talk to you. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
We'll roll right into our next session. We have a session that I think you'll enjoy. Two fantastic speakers, Catherine Pazulich, who's a 12-year veteran of COAERS, and Mike Benson, a trustee. The working title for this was Goodbye Tension, Hello Pension. But we decided on a more traditional approach, Retirement Readiness 101, Smart Retirement Planning for a New Career Stage. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Catherine Pazulich. Let's go.
Well, hi there, good afternoon. I was sitting out at the table as you were coming in, so I got to see a lot of you as you came in. So excited to see so many faces. Again, I'm Catherine Pazulich. I'm a member service specialist here with City of Austin Employees Retirement System. And I'm here to talk to you about my favorite subject, and hopefully yours too, retirement. And just like Russell stated, Retirement Readiness 101, giving you some insight. So the point of the presentation today is understanding the pension plan, making sure that we're familiar with facets of it, understanding your unique and valuable benefit, and of course, planning for retirement. So City of Austin Employees Retirement System is a defined benefit plan, which is different than a deferred comp plan, your 401ks plan. We're a 401a. And the main difference is with those deferred comp plans, you put in over your career, and then when you start taking those distributions, once the money's gone, the benefit stops. So that's where we're different. When you retire, you receive that payment for your lifetime. So as long as you live. If you live to be 100, we're going to pay you until then. And hopefully with science and cryogenics, we all live to be over 100. That would not be a good plan. I do know that. I do hope. So we're composed of different facets. Of course, us, the members, as contributing members, every time we get paid, we put in member contributions. It's 9% of our base pay that goes into the account balance. We're also rounded out with city contributions and then, of course, investment earnings. The benefit of a plan like this is you don't have to worry about the volatility of the stock market. We have people that worry about the investments. All you do is just contribute, and then when you're eligible, you receive those benefits. So whenever you're thinking about retirement, there's different facets that go into the calculation. A lot of people think of it like deferred comp, where you put in this bucket of money, and then when you go to retire, we base it on the bucket of money you put in. And that's not how we calculate the benefits. We do use factors that are listed here, and we'll just kind of go through them. So when you go to retire, we look at your final average salary, which is your highest 36 months in the last 10 years. So we'll go back 10 years worth. Now, for most of us, we get these little increases. So usually the highest 36 are the last 36. But for some people, it may be farther back. So we'll go back 10 years worth and look for the highest 36. So that's one factor. And of course, we also think about the service credit, the years and months of service that you're retiring with, and then the multiplier. The multiplier for Group A is 3%, and the multiplier for Group B is 2.5. When we calculate all that together, that brings us to your lifetime monthly annuity, and that's the highest amount you can receive as a retiree. So those are the factors that go into it. We also want to make your attention to the fact that there are survivor benefits that you can choose at retirement. We do offer disability and death benefits as well. So all of that is noted as well. So we're talking about retirement, and some of us may be very close, some of us may be retired, and some of us may be pretty far away. So another topic that we talk about quite often is called vesting. So once you're with the city for 5 years and you have 5 years of creditable service, you're considered a vested member, which means if you leave city employment and if you leave your money and time here, you'll be eligible for a retirement in the future once you meet the age requirement. So vesting is a very important milestone. So not as close as retirement, but still getting you that security. So if you terminate from city employment, you have a few options for your account. You can choose to leave it with us and of course stay a vested member with that 5 years of service and then retire in the future when you meet the age requirement. But you can also choose to refund that account out, take all the contributions with you. If you do choose to refund it out, it is a taxable benefit. So it's 20% that would come out of that before you receive it. Or you can choose to roll it over to an eligible account like an IRA, a 401k, something like that. Now keep in mind that if you do choose to refund those contributions when you leave, then you no longer have benefits with us. It's null and void, so no future benefit. If you get to that point and you have any questions, we always ask that you reach out to us first before you make any decisions so we can help you with those decisions and let you know what the benefits are. So as an active city employee, every time you get paid, you make a contribution to the retirement system. And then for that month, you get a month's credit towards retirement. And of course, those months equals years, and that gets us closer to retirement. There's other ways to get service credit as well. And that's through something called service purchases. There are service purchases that you can make prior to retirement, and there are service purchases you can make at the time of retirement. So we'll just go through those. So as an active city employee, if you have service with us, let's say that you worked a period of time with the city, and then you terminated from city employment, you said, I'm never coming back, and you took all your money out, and you're back with us. That service credit prior doesn't count towards retirement because it was refunded. But it's possible to purchase that service, so it does count, and that's called prior service. And you can purchase that time at any time during your city career. There's other options for purchase as well at the time of retirement. So the city offers a supplementary service purchase. You can purchase up to 5 years of service you haven't actually worked. You do have to have 5 years of creditable service in order to make that purchase. We also offer a military service purchase. You can purchase up to 48 months of active duty military time. If you were a temp or a part-time employee before becoming a full-time contributing employee, you weren't making contributions to the retirement system at that time. So that's called non-contributory time. it's possible to purchase that time, so it does count towards retirement. So if you have that kind of time, you would be eligible to purchase it. And then, of course, we also offer a sick leave conversion at the time of retirement. So we'll take a look at your I even got some questions at the front desk about this one, so I know it's a popular one. So we'll take a look at your sick leave at retirement and see what the hours are, and they convert over to months of service. The conversion is generally 80 to 160 hours. It gives you a month. Anything over that would give you additional months. You do pay to convert it, and then that means more service for you at retirement, which means a higher monthly payment for your lifetime. So all of these purchases are calculated a little bit differently. For instance, the prior service would be whatever you refunded at the time plus interest from the date of refund to the present. The supplementary and the non-contributory are actuarial calculations. So they take into account your hourly rate, your average salary, the time at retirement. So if you have any questions about the calculations, or if you need any estimates, you can run them in your Member Direct account. And of course, if you have difficulty with that, reach out to us. The other question we get regarding purchases, how do you pay for it? That's a great question. So you can use your own funds, come out of pocket to pay for the service. You can also use your city deferred comp account. So if you're contributing to the city deferred comp, a lot of our city employees kind of put away until they get a really healthy balance. And then when they're ready to make the purchase at retirement, we do what's called a rollover. We initiate the forms for you, we help you through the process, we request the funds from deferred comp, and there's no tax implications because it's considered a rollover. So if you're thinking about purchase, that may be a good way to fund it. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the sick leave purchase because that is the most popular one at retirement. So you're able to convert that sick leave at retirement, and again, in increments of 80 to 160 hours would give you a month. You can start that process 30 to 60 days prior to retirement, and then of course we'll request the funds from deferred comp. You can also use deferred comp for this purchase as well, and then that would increase your total service credit at retirement, which means a higher monthly payment for you. So City of Austin Employees Retirement System participates in the Proportionate Service Credit Program. And what that means is we recognize service credit from other entities, and they recognize credit from us. So when we're talking about the service credit, we're just talking about the time. Wherever you put the time and money in, other than us, it would stay put. But there are other entities that can help you to meet retirement eligibility sooner. So the state retirement system, the employees retirement system, the teachers retirement system, Texas County and District retirement system, Texas municipal retirement system, they're all listed on the slide, and of course they're listed on our website as well. So to give you an idea of how it worked, if I worked for the state for 10 years and I left my money and time there and I came to the city and I put in 10 years here and I'm 55, I could retire. Now, when I go to retire, the city's only going to pay me based on the service credit I put in here. And of course, the state would pay me whenever I'm eligible. So it doesn't have to be a simultaneous retirement. And again, the rules are different between us and the other system. But we do recognize the credit. It's important that you know that we don't know about this credit unless you let us know. So there is a proportionate verification form that we ask you to fill out if you need to verify proportionate service to us. What we do is we reach out to that entity and inquire about the time and then get it on your record. So that way, if you run retirement estimates or if we run retirement estimates, we have an accurate depiction of what that first eligibility looks like. And then of course, what the payment will look like as well. So regarding these proportionate systems, it does have to be funded time, meaning I left the teacher's retirement system, I left my money and time. I left the state retirement system, I left my money and time. Now, that being said, there is a caveat. There are two entities that you can still get credit for, even if it's refunded. So that's the Texas County and District retirement system and the Texas municipal retirement system. So again, if you're not sure about proportionate service, or if you don't know if we have it on file, reach out to us. We're happy to check it for you. Or if you need to report proportionate service to us, please do so. And again, it only helps you to meet retirement eligibility. So if you're already 65, and eligible for retirement, it's kind of a moot point. Just helps you to get there sooner, possibly. We want to remind everybody to keep beneficiaries current. We want you to keep your beneficiaries current just in case something happens to you. So as an active employee, you always want to make sure your beneficiary information is current. If you have a Member Direct account, you're able to view that information in Member Direct. And keep in mind that when you're updating beneficiaries, it may be in different places. So there's a beneficiary for your retirement, there's a beneficiary for your life insurance, which is through the city benefits office, and then possibly one for deferred comp. So if I wanted to update beneficiaries, I may have to do it in all three places. So just a reminder regarding that. When you're listing your beneficiary, and if you're married, it may require spousal consent if you're not listing your spouse as the primary beneficiary, so keep that in mind. And at retirement as well, if you're taking an option that does not include your spouse, at a certain percentage, it would require spousal consent as well. And again, just reinforcing keeping beneficiaries up to date. And then we get this question a lot: what happens if you get divorced? If you're retired and you've gotten divorced, a lot of people ask, well, can I change that option that I selected at the time of retirement? The answer is no. Once you've retired, those options are set in stone regardless of divorce. If there is a divorce and there's some kind of distribution of funds, whether you're active or retired, we do require a document. It's called a quadro. It's a qualified domestic relations order. And there's information about this on our website. But if there's any confusion, please reach out to us. We can certainly assist. We get this question too: what happened if I marry after I retire? So there's no way to change the option. You can't add anybody on, but you can add them to your beneficiary form for your death benefits. So speaking of death benefits, if something happens to you prior to retirement, so if you're an active employee and you pass away, whatever is your account balance is paid in lump sum to whoever is listed as the beneficiary. And again, that's why the beneficiary is so important, because we want to know who to pay those benefits to. So it'd be the account balance times 2. So 2 times the account balance in a one-time lump sum paid to whoever's listed as the beneficiary. Now, if you're an active employee and you're eligible for retirement, you're just continuing to work to enhance that benefit, and you pass away, then your spouse would be able to retire in your place and receive a monthly payment for their lifetime. When you retire, there is a death benefit provided. So as active employees, we probably have 1, 2, 3, or 4 times our salary for retirement for life insurance. So at retirement, that changes a bit. We do provide a $10,000 death benefit at no cost to you, and you'll fill out a beneficiary form as part of your retirement packet. And the city also offers $1,000 of life insurance at no cost to you. So a little bit different than you're used to as far as active employees. So we always urge somebody, if they need more than that, to look outside of the city prior to retirement to ensure that you're fully covered. So we used to talk a lot about the 3-legged stool, and that kind of went by the wayside. And now we're bringing it back because we're seeing this nasty thing firsthand called inflation, where the cost of everything is going up. But unfortunately, our retirements and our salaries aren't really keeping up with that. So the 3-legged stool is important. It simply means make sure to know all of your options for retirement. So City of Austin Employees Retirement System is one leg of that stool. And then, of course, if you have deferred compensation with the city, that would be another. And then Social Security. And when we're asking you to research retirement, we're asking you to research us. Yes, what would that payment be? But then again, what would Social Security look like for you? And when can you start that distribution? What does deferred comp look like whenever you can start those distributions? And how does that all work together? So we just want to remind you about all the facets for retirement. So when you're doing retirement planning, we want you to look at all of those things. So the retirement decision, it's a hard one. If you're eligible for retirement, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to retire. The longer you work, of course, the higher the payment. So you want to think about these things when you're retiring. What do you want your retirement to be about? We get a lot of people that come, retire with us and they're confused, like, well, what do I do next? Are you truly retiring? Are you going to go on and do something else? Are you going to work for the city part-time? Are they going to get you back in here? So these are things to think about. And then, of course, sources of income, just like we talked about before. All sources of income, is that going to be enough to cover all of your expenses? And make sure that everything is good before you retire. Because, of course, once you retire, that's it. If you do come back to work for the city, it is part-time. It's 29 hours. We get a part-time status, 1,508 hours in a rolling 12-month period. Now, if you go work in the private sector or anywhere else aside from the city, you can work full-time and receive this retirement check. So eligibility. The city of Austin has 2 groups for retirement. We have Group A and we have Group B. So all of those folks that were contributing, full-time contributing employees prior to January 1st, 2012 are considered Group A. Everybody after that is considered Group B. Now, the main difference between the 2 groups is retirement eligibility. So we'll just go through eligibility for those. So in Group A, you can retire with 23 years of service credit. So 23 years of service credit at any age. The other way you can retire is at age 55 with at least 20 years of service credit. The last way you can retire in Group A is at age 62 with at least 5 years of creditable service. So we get folks that call us and they say, well, I don't have 23 years yet, but they're already 55 and they have more than 20 years. So it's important that you know that you just have to meet eligibility one of these 3 ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be all of them. So with Group B, it's a little bit different. A normal age retirement is at age 62. So 62 is the age marker, but you also have to have at least 30 years of creditable service. So 30 years at age 62, or 65 with at least 5 years of creditable service. Now, the city does offer an early retirement for Group B. So City of Boston Employees Retirement System, Group B folks have early age retirement. What that means is if you're at least age 55 and you have at least 10 years of creditable service, you can choose to retire. Now, that being said, that would be a permanently reduced benefit that you would receive. So you'd receive less, depending on how soon it is you retire early. But it is an option for Group B only. So we have this wonderful, I can't stress it enough, this wonderful member portal called Member Direct. And if you haven't registered for Member Direct, this is my ploy. If there's any takeaway today, register for Member Direct. As we get closer to retirement and even after retirement, it's going to be a valuable tool for you. You can get to the Member Direct through our website, which is www.coaers.org. Up in the right-hand corner, it says Member Login Registration. You're going to click on that. You're going to need about 15 minutes of uninterrupted time. You'll have to come up with a unique username, unique password, but once that's set, that will be the same information throughout the duration if you're Member Direct. And it gives you such an abundance of information. So it used to be that once a year, we would send you a member statement in January, and it would have all your information on it, but you'd only get it once a year. Now you can log into Member Direct. You can have that information at any time. It will show you when your first eligibility for retirement is. It'll show you what your account balance is. Let's take a look at the next screen here. This kind of gives you an idea of what it looks like. This would be the landing page. What group you're in. You can check your beneficiaries on here to make sure that they're current. And then as you get closer to the retirement process, under communications, all the forms that you need for retirement are going to be there. So we can guide you through that. You can apply for retirement directly through Member Direct, and we can assist you with that as well. But we can't stress it enough. And it used to be that you would fill out a form, you say, I want a retirement estimate. And it would take us about 10 to 14 days, sometimes depending on how busy we were to get you that information. Now you can log in, you can run your estimate in real time. And a lot of folks say, well, how do I know it's accurate? It's pulling from the same information that I would run it with. You're pulling from your exact information. I have done some virtual appointments recently with folks who just want to know how to navigate it better. So once you get in there, if you have difficulty, please set up an appointment with us. We do phone, virtual, in person, and we can help you to get familiar and comfortable with it. So that way you'll be better suited for retirement planning for yourself. And of course, retirement planning requires a checklist, your to-do steps. You want to just set up your Member Direct account, just like we stated. And for those of you who already have one, I hope you're enjoying it. Register for a seminar. We have seminars like this all the time. You can register for them through your Member Direct account. If you're within 2 years of retirement, we do have a retirement planning seminar that I strongly urge you to attend. The benefit of that one is we go more in depth as far as what the options are at retirement. And then the city benefits office is that one to let you know what will happen with your insurance after retirement. And then we also have a deferred comp rep. So if you haven't been to the planning your retirement seminar and you're within 2 years of retirement, please register. It's beneficial. We want you to review and update your beneficiaries to make sure everything's current. Declare proportionate service. Again, if you don't let us know about it, we won't know about the proportionate service. We want you to initiate any service purchases that you want to make prior to retirement. Run benefit estimates. Even if you're many years out, it's valuable to know what that benefit will be in the future. Review your annual member statement and Member Direct. And then, of course, plan your retirement dates. So that way you know when you'll retire. I've talked to several of you today who are planning retirement in December 2025 and other dates. So I'm excited that people are already thinking about it. I will tell you in general, our most popular retirement date is December. A lot of city employees stick around because they want to get that last stability check before they retire, which is smart. But if you're trying to retire in December, we ask that you reach out to us early because we get so busy. So we want to make sure to accommodate everybody. So that's your warning about December retirement. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mike Benson.
Thank you, Catherine. So I want to flip back to that page. When will you be ready to retire? I'll tell you a little bit about my retirement story. Well, mine goes back to the Vietnam War with my dad getting drafted into the military. My dad was my hero, and I wanted to follow in his footsteps. I wasn't interested in military life, but what drew me, the interest was the fact that he retired at the age of 45 after 22 years of service in the Air Force. He had a life of leisure after that, with one exception when he came to work for me part-time for about 6 months when I was at a .com company. He never worked another day in his life. And man, that sounded good to me, right? Retire at a young age and have this life of leisure. But as most of us remember, the dot-com had a bust, and my 80,000 stock options that I thought were going to be my early ticket to retirement, at $200 a pop is going to be $16 million in my head, and it's worth zero. I decided, I better figure out a more stable job and something that will offer a good retirement system. So in 2001, I joined the city of Austin. I was laser focused on career advancement and getting to that magic retirement date, right? I was super frugal. Buy a car, I run it into the ground, 150,000, 200,000 miles, keep it for 15 to 20 years. Maxed out my Roth IRA every year, maxed out the deferred comp 457 plan. I was, again, laser focused at hitting that retirement date as young as I could. I ended up using the 457 plan, as Catherine alluded to buy 5 years of service credits. And when the pandemic hit in 2020, I retired after 19 years with the city at the age of 49. I made it. Now what? So question 1.1, is there a retirement career in transition? Well, no, that wasn't my plan. I wanted that life of leisure, right? But in fact, it turned out to be, yes, it was a career transition. After 6 months, my honey-do list was done with the wife. Boredom was creeping in. Even though I was exercising more, reading more books, doing that leisurely stuff, I found myself sitting on the couch a little too much. I didn't want to become this couch potato that watched the game show network or the golf network all day, every day, right? Fortunately, the city came knocking and they called me up and asked me to come back and work on a few special projects. And I was happy to oblige. And it bumped some of those cobwebs that were forming in my brain and allowed me to do something productive with my day. And that was it. It was doing something productive with my day. That is what was missing in my retirement. And so that's my recommendation to you. What do you want your retirement to be about? Is it still working, but maybe at a more sedate pace or something less stressful? Is it travel? Is it volunteering somewhere? Have a plan to do something. Just don't become that couch potato that I was starting to become. The City of Austin gig I have only averages about 5 to 10 hours a week. It's great. I get to pick the projects I want. It's based on my time commitments that are of my choosing, although I have a hard time saying no to Diana when she asks me to come help. But this still leaves a big hole of time to fill. And I've done that with a new passion, a new career as such. As you know from the pandemic, the COVID hit a lot of service areas. One in particular was school bus driving. My local school district had a 70% vacancy rate of school bus drivers. And as a parent, and they were talking about canceling routes. And as a parent, I figured, well, I could either complain about it or I could do something about it. And so I chose to do something about it and put in my application. I think it took them about 20 minutes to give me a job. And now, so I drive a school bus for special needs kids, and I love it, even though it doesn't pay squat. I've also started spending money in retirement like I've never done before. Holy cow. So travel's a big thing with my wife and my family. In the last 4 years, we've done over a dozen trips. A couple of them, or a few of them, were just couple, my wife and I, but the vast majority of them are with my family in tow. So again, back to sources of income, right? Yes, you could spend money like you're doing now and figure you'll be comfortable, but you think about, you may be spending more money because you're living your greatest retirement life, right? You're doing fun things. So focus on that three-legged stool approach, 457, IRA, working 1 or 2 more years, increases that 30-year average, 36-month average, saying it right, the way you guys like to say it. I say 36 months, or 3 years instead of 36 months. Increase that payout that you're going to get, even though you're working for pennies on the dollar, you're also working for that increased payout, which can be important. So remember from page 5, all right, I'm gonna throw you off again. I'll click back up about 9 more pages. That cost of living adjustment is not a promised benefit in bold.
Yeah.
So once you retire, those pay raises don't happen anymore. So keep that in mind. So am I happy that I retired at a young age? Yes, absolutely. Would I have been happy still working full-time a little bit longer in hindsight? Also, yes. So everybody's retirement journey is unique to them. Do what's right for you. That's all I got.
On to more serious subjects. We experience about 450 or so retirements a year. So we're not psychologists, but we see a lot of folks move into retirement from active work. And we have some advice for you. And this follows Mike's presentation exactly. That many people think that retirement is a finish line. Just if I could just make it to 23 years, or if I could just make it to 62 or 65. And my message to you is it is not. It is not a finish line. It is a transition. And transitions require some planning ahead of time and an adjustment period after. And so here's what we see when people retire. We see retirees struggle if they have a sudden departure from their routine. I'll tell you a war story. We occasionally have retirees on Monday morning who just can't take it anymore. And instead of driving to the office, they detour and they drive to our office and plop down in front of Teresa or her group and say, I'm done, I'd like to retire. And we say, great, have you planned? And they say, no, I'm just here Monday morning at 8:15 because I am done with that place. This is not a good way to retire. It requires planning and it's an adjustment. So sudden departure from structure is something to avoid. Also, we see social isolation, we see inactivity, and we, to Mike's point, lots of poor financial habits. Another war story is a retiree told me, when I retired for the first month, every day was like Saturday, and on Saturday I go to Home Depot, so every day I'm at Home Depot. This is a problem. So we would encourage you to maintain healthy habits, mentally, physically, and financially in retirement. Have a routine, have a schedule, like Mike said. Retire to something, not from something. Have meaningful work. Rekindle old interests, develop new interests, give back, volunteer, teach, learn, and be adapted to change in a positive way. Also, many of you return to work. There are rules if you return to work for the city. You can find out about those today or anytime for our materials, but returning to work is also a good, healthy habit to think about. You also have resources as a retiree, and we want to help foster those resources. COAERS has an extensive website which has information about housing, transportation, rules about returning to work, healthcare. You have a tremendous healthcare benefit as a retiree. And every year you'll go through an open enrollment period as well. There's legal information, there's discount information. And you see on the slide, we can barely fit all the types of resources that you have. Take advantage of these. And if you have other suggestions for us, you know of a retiree in need of anything, let us know, because we can be a conduit and a clearinghouse of information for retirees. We also want you to be prepared, especially for a time when you need help. Think about that. There may be a time in the future where you need assistance. And our first point here is to gather important information, and then at the appropriate time, share it with a trusted source. Now, those are two distinct concepts. Gather your information, which can be a challenge. Look at this list. Contact people for COAERS, Empower, City of Austin HR, insurance companies, maybe you have life insurance, legal counsel, your financial advisor, your accountant, your insurance agent. Where are your beneficiary forms, life insurance policies, your social security cards, your car insurance cards, your birth certificates, military documents, marriage license. You see the list goes on and on and on. Many people have not consolidated this information, and moreover, They haven't prepared for a time when they can't take care of these things themselves and they have to hand this off to someone else. And guess what? If that someone else doesn't know any of these things exist, things may not get done. For example, even a well-prepared person who might be incapacitated for some reason may not be able to pay their electric bill, right? That's because no one knows what the electric bill is or how to pay it. So that's a simple example, and you can multiply the complexity of that over your financial life and look at that slide. So start by thinking about gathering important information, and then at the appropriate time, bring a trusted source into that. Also, this is estate planning, and we're not going to get into extensive estate planning, but there are some very simple things that you can do with your attorney's help to prepare for a time when you may need help. The first one is a durable power of attorney. It's a fairly easy routine document that your attorney can draft for you. It will help you designate an attorney in fact or an agent to act on your behalf if you need assistance to take care of your financial matters. So take this seriously. If you don't have a durable power of attorney, consider getting one. Also, there's the same concept for medical care. If you want someone to be able to make medical care decisions about you if you're incapacitated, have an attorney draft a medical power of attorney. And then there's also in Texas a healthcare directive or a living will that you've probably heard about as well. These are three very simple documents that you can have do today, won't cost you very much to make this an important part of your estate planning. If you need help finding a lawyer, there are tons of ways to find that, including the state part of Texas. You'll get this slide deck and you can see the help that you can get there as well. Long-term care is an issue. Long-term care is a quick way to describe a constellation of things. Mostly care for a time when you can't care for yourself. It varies from in-home services, either for a partial day or all day, home health aid, adult day services, assisted living, or a nursing home. My takeaway here is it's important to understand what your options are and how to access them if you need them. And you can do this at any stage of life. Understand long-term care and how to go about getting it. And also as a retiree in particular, as well as all of us, you've got to be alert. It's still a big bad world out there in terms of scams. We still see email phishing scams. Believe it or not, we still see mailboxes being broken into and paper checks being stolen. And we still see occasionally fraud, mostly with family members. And so this goes back to that trusted source comment. It's not rampant, but occasionally we will see this unfortunate event where a caregiver or a family or a friend has perpetrated a fraud. And so what can you do? Well, with your email and online, just be suspicious of everything. Use multi-factor authentication with your email. If you're a COAERS retiree, you should not be receiving a paper check. You should be receiving your check via electronic funds transfer, and we can get you signed up today. And then all of us should be reviewing our financial information. Set up fraud alerts, read your credit, monitor your bank accounts, check your beneficiary forms, and that way you can protect yourself. This is Anthony's picture. He looks fantastic. Story. Let's welcome Anthony Ross.
Let me begin with my own autobiography. I'm an Air Force veteran, actually an Air Force retiree. I retired in '95 from the Air Force Reserve when they closed my unit down in Berkeley. After that, I went to work in the private sector and ultimately had to leave it because peace broke out between Russia and the United States, and I was on the government systems division. And that was good. I had a great severance package. It wasn't bad. But I started working for the state of Texas. And I started like 2 weeks after I was laid off. So I didn't even get an unemployment check. That was kind of sad. So after working there for a while, at the place where they laid me off, I was working with a young woman, and she was a CPA. I had my MBA from St. Ed's, but she had a CPA, and she was smart. I knew she was smart. And she said, "Tony, I think you can do the CPA too." I was thinking in my head, I didn't want to insult her. I said, "Yeah, I think I can too. If you can do it, I can do it." And so I actually, at some point, I transferred to the city. It was another situation where by the end of the month, I had a job with the city, with the Office of the City Auditor. Well, had a great time there, and I transferred to Austin Energy, where I finally ended up. Let me just say that I had a great time with Austin Energy. It was, and working for the city in general, because fact is, you all provide excellent, well, that was our thing at Austin Energy, customer service to the people. Whether it's a library or whether you're in transportation or with public works, or with Austin Energy or with Austin Water, watershed protection, all these different agencies within the city provide vital services. But ultimately, I retired in 2011 with 18 years of actual service. I bought 4 years of my military time back over the time period there. And, but while I was working for the city, I did achieve the CPA back in '94. And while I was working for the city, I started volunteering with Austin Community College on their accounting advisory committee. I got one of my friends here on the committee, and he's been on there ever since. But what I want to say about it is that it's one of the I've been getting a lot of inspiration from women I know. I'm a big fan of women. And, and I want to say, while I was there, the head of the committee said, you on this accounting advisory, you ought to consider teaching a few courses at college. So that was my part-time job. I worked at the city, and at night, a couple of nights a week, I'd go to one of the campuses and teach a class. So when I retired in 2011, I started looking for permanent, because the idea that Mike mentioned was that you need to have something to do. Otherwise, you find yourself on an obituary column. Don't want that. And a lot of times when you work for the city, you can retire at a fairly young age. You don't have to be 65 and 70 to retire, especially you type A people. Type A, Group A. Well, I guess I would say that my next career move was to start working for Concordia University. I still taught at ACC occasionally, still on the accounting advisory committee, but I got a full-time job as a professor of accounting at Concordia University, and I worked there until 2020. 2020 is one of those red letter years. That's when we realized that we had COVID in our country. And I kept going there until December of 2020. I felt that, my power of my dynamism as a teacher was really sacrificed when I had to do it online. And my suspicion was that some of my students were still in bed. They get up, sign on, and they go back to sleep. And I noticed that a bit in the test results. So I started to get more rigor there, but I felt that maybe I'd had enough. I'd become eligible for my Social Security at 67. One of those 1953 people where, people said that's ancient. Yeah, pretty ancient. Well, I got the retirement from Concordia, I got the retirement from Social Security, I got the retirement from the Air Force, got the retirement from the city. So I felt like my financial situation was fairly secure. But I'm reminded of what my friend Russell had put up there, long-term care, or will, or a trust. My wife and I have a trust, and it's got all those documents in there. And, I have a succession of people who could be my executor in case somebody feels like they can't do it, or they're not around, because, the reality is we're all on a razor's edge as far as longevity is concerned. So we have to be ready for things. What I want to conclude with is we have a very good plan here, and that in post-retirement period, You need to have a plan. It doesn't have to be a whole written out long list, 1, 2, 3, 4, but you need to have in your mind at least, how am I going to spend my retirement years? What are you going to do? Volunteer is a good thing. I volunteer quite a bit. I'm an elected member of this board, but I work with a number of other nonprofits. I also enjoy just regular citizen things to do. There are things that you can do to help people that they don't pay your salary. I haven't been paid since I retired from Concordia, but I'm still busy. And I would commend you to that. Stay healthy. Try to eat right. Try to, treat other people right. You'll find that, the problems with anxiety, stuff with your stomach are much less when you can work and live with a clear conscience. I would just say, in conclusion, for you retirees, still continue to make contributions. For you guys that are thinking about retiring or are in the city system now, just remember it's a good lifeline. But oftentimes, as I begin, you're going to be quite young when you retire. You'll still be vibrant. You won't be able to leap tall buildings at a single bound like when you were 20, but you could couple of bounds and maybe even crawl over the building. The thing is, life is still good, and try to live a good life. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Tony. I can't stress enough, long-term care. If you haven't explored long-term care and those needs, please do so. It's important that you understand how to obtain that care if you need it, and the importance of estate planning. And so we can get you started on that process. We are also looking at doing a durable power of attorney just for our members, so that if something happens to you, we can communicate with a family member, even if you don't have a durable power of attorney generally. So we hope to roll that out in the fall.
Brian Sinclair, Vice Chair of the COAERS Board of Trustees. On behalf of the board, it's my privilege to extend a warm and enthusiastic welcome to all of you as part of our 2024 Member Summit. We thank you again for joining us. During this session, you will hear from members of the COAERS management team as we share updates about COAERS operations and initiatives, the financial health of the retirement system, the investment program, and discuss the system's long-term sustainability. After the discussion, we will move into a Q&A portion of the program to answer questions that were submitted in advance by you, our COAERS members. If time allows, we will take questions from our members in the audience as well. First up, for our first system update, David Stafford, Deputy Chief Investment Officer, will provide an update of the investment program. David.
Thank you, Brian, and hello, fellow members. It's my pleasure to be able to present to you all today. My presentation will discuss the investment program here at COAERS with some updates on our recent performance, some of the initiatives that we've been undertaking here recently, as well as some forward-looking priorities and things that we're going to be tackling here in the near future as well in the investment program. I really appreciated the energy from our presenters today, as well as from the audience, so we're hoping to keep that going here as well. So first and foremost, drop my clicker. We've got an introduction of the investment staff, and I think it's interesting to helpful to put a face to a name. Sometimes we talk about investment staff. Who are these guys and what are they doing? So here we've got 4 dedicated investment staff at COAERS, where our full-time job all day, every day is working on the investments of the system, and implementing those and making appropriate recommendations to the board and its investment committee as well. I think one of the most important things to say here, in addition to us having a talented group that I think really brings a lot to the table with all the appropriate designations and all that good stuff, is that we're also members of the system. So a little bit about me, I'm born and raised here in Austin, so a few folks have made comments about appreciation for the good work that you all do and the importance of making Austin what it is. So I would extend that thank you as well. Additionally, I've worked at COAERS for 6 years now. So an important thing about us is we're all members of the system. So every day when I'm going to work, I'm also paying into the fund. And I'm also earning a benefit just like you are. So I'm a vested member and I have a lot of alignment and really wanting the system to do well over time. So when I come in to do my job, you're very sure that I want to do a good job and that I'm really bought in to the success of the program over time. Because just like this is probably a very important retirement benefit for you all, it's also a very important retirement benefit for me and my colleagues as well. So moving on to investment performance. We've got a year in review of 2023 here. The fund returned 12.3% net of fees during the calendar year. As I'm sure you saw in your personal accounts, nearly every investment type had a strong year during the calendar year. And this helped increase fund assets to over $3.2 billion. Excluding cash outflows from the fund, this represented an investment gain of over $350 million, an increase in the system's assets over time, which is extremely meaningful. I'd say that's particularly true given the challenging year that 2022 was. So a year where stocks went down, bonds went down, real assets went down, and most asset classes all struggled at the same time. A historically challenging year for all investors across the board. Having a nice bounce back in 2023 was really helpful. Leading rate was publicly listed stocks, which returned over 20% during the year. Additionally, cash, there used to be a saying that cash is trash. That is no longer true. Cash returns yields of over 5%, which for a risk-free asset, it can be a really, really useful asset allocation tool as well. So certainly the system is a long-term perpetual entity. So we don't want to just focus on the variations of investment performance in a single year and focus on those shorter time horizons. It's important for us to look at longer horizons as well. On my next slide, we have a chart here showing what those longer term returns have been. Each of the bars on this chart represent the trailing 10-year returns as of that time. I think you may be asking yourself, well, Dave, if cash is earning 5%, why don't we just park all of the system's assets in cash and take 5%, which would be a reasonable question. But what this chart shows us is the risk premium or the investment risk premium that the system earns in addition to those cash rates. So the chart, the blue at the bottom of the chart shows what cash would have earned, and then the green shows the additional premium that the system has earned. So you can see as of calendar year end 2023 that the fund earned an additional 4.5% of what it would have earned just parking the assets in cash over the prior decade. So this number is a bit below its longer term average, where historically this is averaged about 5% above cash rates. And I note that that 2022 calendar year was a challenging year for everybody. Interestingly, this chart also helps show that while cash rates have recently come up to higher levels, they've not been that way for too long. And I think the forward outlook for where cash rates and yields are is maybe murky as well. So there's good value in having an investment program over time. And this helps us to quantify what that risk premium is and what we're really trying to earn in the investment program over time. So that's our backwards looking. That's kind of what returns have been here recently as well. I think sometimes when I tell people what I do at COAERS, they say, what do you do investments? What are you all actually working on a day-to-day basis? Because it's a big and important job to help be a fiduciary to the fund and help guide its investments over time. And so we're taking a little bit of a different tact on my presentation this year. We're looking at, I've laid out some of the key accomplishments that we've had over the past year to a year and a half, to give everybody a sense of some of the important work that's ongoing right now, as well as to lay the groundwork for some of our forward-looking initiatives as well. So recently, we've accomplished a number of items which we've listed out on the slide here. We've completed an asset liability study, which is really a foundational study for the investment program, and we'll talk a bit about that. We've adopted a new strategic asset allocation, which defines the mix of different investment types for the fund. We've performed cost benchmarking because we're very cost conscious as well. And running a program, you have to spend some money to do it, and you want to ensure that you're not spending too much to run a program. We've performed an investment policy and performance evaluation, and the board has selected a new investment consultant as well. So the first of those items is the asset liability study. I noted that that's a foundational study and bit of work that we do in the investment program, help define what the system's risk profile and liquidity needs are. The way that these studies work is we map out the future growth and variability in growth of the system's investments, and we compare that to the cash outflows. So we know that we're going to have to pay benefits, and the system is cash flow negative in paying those benefits. To get a good idea of what's the risk profile of the fund and what are the cash needs of the system over time as well. Some key takeaways from the study that we performed in 2023, we're modeling the system's new contribution policy and its impact on the system's risk profile over time. We found a lot of good information in that, most notably that the system's liquidity profile has improved significantly, where the cash outflows are not as severe. Additionally, the contribution policy is much more robust in the face of difficult investment experiences as well. So this study gave us some really great data to discuss and consider. Given this information and the changing market environment that we all live in, is there anything that we should do? And it really lays a great foundation for having those conversations. Our executive director, Chris Hansen, will also discuss this study as well as some of the key takeaways from it a bit more in his presentation later as well. The next slide, that helps us inform the fund's asset allocation. So given this new understanding and the data about the fund's risk profile and liquidity needs, we conducted an asset allocation study. And what these studies do is help us model out different asset mixes to show their impacts on the expected risk and return of the fund. The chart that we have on the slide here plots out expected returns versus expected risk. And that's really the trade-off that we're trying to solve for in the investment program, is taking the optimal amount of risk to earn more returns. What this study showed us is that by considering new investment types which are less reliant on public equities and perhaps more liquid, the fund could be expected to have higher returns with the same risk or less risk for the same returns, where you see those lines shifting up and to the left. So this study led to the adoption of a new strategic asset allocation for the fund that included a new allocation to private credit. These strategies are attractive in the total fund context, but they have high current income, less volatility and correlation to different asset classes. So this represented an important change that we're still working through and are being very methodical in our approach to avoid some of the pitfalls often associated with these investments. One of those pitfalls can be cost control. I know you might be in the crowd and hear me say private credit or illiquid assets and think that those are high fees, which I think is generally true. But we performed some major cost analysis in 2023 to evaluate how the COAERS fund is being run, what are the costs associated with it, and comparing that to the broad universe of other public pension peers. I think it's important to note that this study didn't only look at what we're paying to investment managers, but it also looks at the cost of investment staff, so our salaries, custody of the fund, and all the various oversights of the fund in addition to those fees. And I think we have a few really interesting takeaways here. One is that we were in the bottom decile for total fees. So unlike maybe your grades or your performance, where you want to be top decile or top quartile, being bottom decile in cost means that we are a very, very low cost plan. So much so that this report showed if you were to give the COAERS fund and its asset allocation and mix one of our peers across the street here in town and said, hey, can you go run this plan for us? The baseline cost expectation would be $3.4 million. So just walking in the door, I'm a big believer in a dollar saved is a dollar earned. Running a lower cost plan has a lot of valuable benefits. And I hope that this gives you comfort that in evaluating new approaches or resources for the system, we want to ensure that any dollars that we're spending in the system have a great return on those in the context of the total fund. And we've been very efficient in doing so over time, and we'll continue to do so on your behalf. Another important report that we've done, which is required statutorily and is generally speaking of best practice, is an investment practices and performance evaluation report. We recently had one of these reports given to the board by their consultant that runs through the way that COAERS is set up in general. It looks at our asset allocation, the fees that we discussed previously, our governance structure, how we do things as a fund, and weighs in and gives advice and recommendations for ways in which we can improve. I think one of the great things in investing for me personally and professionally is that things are always changing. We need to adapt to new information and that there's always room for improvement. This report gave a solid foundation of recommendations to say, hey, here's how you're run, and there's a lot of really good things about the way that the fund is run. And here are some potential improvements for the board to consider implementing the investment program as well. So we're continuing to try to refine our processes and improve upon them over time so that we can play the important role that the investment program does in providing everybody's promised retirement benefits. Let's see here, another best practice is to receive advice from a variety of sources. In addition to the COAERS investment staff that work here all day, every day, the board has retained a third-party consultant to provide them advice on the investment program. The board selected a new general investment consultant after following a comprehensive request for proposal process to evaluate the needs of the system and help select a consultant that's likely to help us meet those needs as well. The new consulting firm that was selected is Nikita, and they have a strong history, well equipped to help COAERS in these initiatives, and has robust capabilities, as you can see from the data points here on the slide as well. So, looking forward, with all that said, we've made pretty significant progress on quite a few items, and I hope this gives you a good idea of what we do here in the investment program, in addition to just keeping the trains running. And we're not done yet. Looking forward, we're being very methodical in our approach to building out new asset class exposures and strategy types. We continue to review the fund governance and policy associated with that IPPE report that we received. And we're looking to improve on existing processes where possible and prudent and appropriate. So in conclusion, I just want to say that thank you all for the opportunity to present a bit about kind of who we are, what we're working on, and some of our recent results. And say that it's truly been an honor to be able to work here every day, and I really thank you all for the work that you do as well. So thank you very much.
We're going to have Russell Nash right next to me, Deputy Executive Director, to present an update on COAERS operations, new initiatives, and the new COAERS headquarters, which I believe we are in right now.
We are. Thank you, Brad. You've seen enough of me today, so I'm going to be brief. But our first slide that I have will show you that we are open for business here at what we call 4700. We have a dedicated staff, member services people. You've seen a few of them here today. Rachel's in the back, Teresa can too. They are competent and caring, and they want to serve you. So they're here Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and we are open for business for you. Now, to aid your appointment, use our website. You can literally go onto our website and tell us how you want to be served. In person, telephone, virtual, it's all right there. You can pick the date you want. You can pick the person that you want to, or just leave it generic and we'll assign you a person first available. Then you get a confirmation on your cell phone. And so you're all set to come in and get business done that you need to with COAERS. The next slide shows you Member Direct. We've talked about that a couple of times today. Member Direct is our online portal. It's literally your best retirement planning tool that you have. This and your account with Empower should be right at the top of your list to start preparing for retirement, like our colleagues, Mr. Ross did. This is an active member of you, which Catherine showed you before. You can check your beneficiaries. It's a big thing for me. You can get your contribution balance and you can run estimates all day long, like Catherine said. It's not some separate database, so you're literally getting to the penny what your benefit is, what your contributions are. There's no lag in data at all. You can declare proportionate time, and there's secure messaging with us as well. Don't send us an email with your personal information on it. Log into Member Direct and message us securely. The next slide shows the features for retirees. Retirees use Member Direct to get their 1099 tax form. That's what they use Member Direct for. They do not have to wait for the mail to fill out their income tax return. And so that is the number one reason now that retirees use Member Direct. They can also print out a benefit summary if they're getting a loan, for example, for a house. Benefit payment history, also beneficiary changes as well. And on the all-important tracking the return to work hours. So if you're a COAERS retiree and you return to work from the city, you're going to be limited in the hours that you work, and you can track them real time here. The next slide shows our website and a variety of resources that we have for you. I mentioned before in my presentation, there's a lot of retiree resources. I did mention that we're doing webinars and in-person events. In fact, on October 1st, we'll have an in-person Medicare event right here at this facility in this room, where we'll have someone from the Medicare office here talking about Medicare. We do tax preparation webinars and also webinars about returning to work as well. The webpage has a lot of assistance. If you have a retiree in need, let us know. Send them to this webpage. There's a lot of help for retirees here. We're also doing a lot of department presentations. It's quite remarkable. We've been to development services, small and minority business, Office of Police Oversight, Office of City Auditor, just to name a few. So if you haven't seen us, you will out in your department. We will also do Spanish language only seminars. So we have staff that can handle that. We also do affinity groups and specialized groups within the city, women, veterans, young professionals, the HRD group as well. We're rolling out some financial wellness seminars. We did a big one, which Dr. Crook was at last year, and we're doing more of them this year. And then finally, I wanted to make sure that if you know of someone or you are in need of a service that we have and you have mobility issues, we will come to you. We will get in the car and drive to wherever you're at to notarize documents, fill out paperwork, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally, I wanted to tell you a little bit about this facility here at 4700. We're in the Miller community, depending on how you pronounce it. I chose Mueller. I'm going to identify as Mueller Boulevard. We're part of the larger community here, which we really appreciate, as well as the Property Owners Association. You own this building. This building is part of the trust, and you're represented in this community inside Austin, Texas. 2 of the 3 floors here are fully leased, which means the income from those leases are actually paying for the upkeep and maintenance of this facility. So we're renting, so that was cash flow negative, and now we're cash flow positive because this building pays for itself in essence. So rest assured, this was a good investment to make. We opened our doors for business in April, and we want you to continue to be a part of the family. You're more than welcome to be here at any time, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. We're here for you. And again, as the slide says, free member parking. Hopefully you all got to park somewhere close here today. And we will continue our programming here at this facility. So that's what I have, Brett.
Thank you, Russell. Thank you, Russell. Appreciate that. Miller, we'll talk about the next person. The final update is going to be the long-term financial health of the system. This will be presented by COAERS Executive Director, Christopher Hansen. Chris, can you tell the members about the health of the retirement system and what they need to know?
Mr. Vice Chair, I'd be happy to do that. Good to see everybody again. I started everything off and now I'm, I guess, bringing up the rear here as the last presentation. Very much again, appreciate everybody's attendance. This is when Russell and I first stepped foot in this room a couple of years ago. We really were excited about what the possibilities were, what we could bring for our membership. And it's just amazing to see so many people turn out here. This is by far and away the largest attendance we've ever had at a member meeting. I think it's 2 times the best we've ever had. So thank you guys for turning out. We really appreciate it. Hopefully you're finding this very informative and valuable. And we are going to look to build upon this in future years. So this has just been a great opportunity to be part of this. So thank you guys. My presentation, I'm going to touch on the long-term financial health of the system. And then I'm going to give a brief update on the funded status from our most recent actuarial evaluation. So historically, determining the long-term funding of COAERS was somewhat like a wizard trying to make a potion. And, I guess our actuary who's not here today, I don't know if he'd take any offense to me comparing him to a wizard working over a pot. But a lot of times I think folks who deal with actuaries, that's what it feels like. So historically, the way we found out our funding situation was our actuary annually would take the experience of the system. So that would include the investment experience, retirement rates, mortality rates, salary changes, put all that together in the actuarial software, and it would produce a funding period. And that was the way it had worked forever at COAERS. And as of last year, at the member meeting we presented, the funding period was 34 years. Now, move forward, last spring, in partnership with the City of Austin, we got passed Senate Bill 1444. This pension legislation significantly improved the long-term funding prospects of the retirement system. In addition to establishing a trajectory for 100% funding, where we no longer need the actuary to do all the potion making, we actually know what the amortization period or the funding period is going to be every single year. So next year, when I'm standing up here presenting to you, I can tell you it'll be 29 years. And that is due to the fact that the city had agreed through that pension legislation to take on an actuarially determined contribution rate. That is a best practice, and we are so grateful for the partnership with the city in doing that. Additionally, this legislation, as Dave mentioned, helped better position the retirement system for market volatility and improve the cash flows of the system. And I'm going to walk you a little bit through kind of the before and after that legislation so you can actually see the difference that it's making in the long-term health of the system. So first, this is the system's projected unfunded actuarial accrued liability. It's a lot to say, or UAAL. And you can see on the left, before passage of that legislation, over the next 20 years, it was projected to just continually increase. And that's obviously not a good thing. After the passage of the legislation, you can see that there is actually a declining point, and that will eventually go to zero. And I have a slide later which actually shows which valuation we know that that unfunded liability will be completely exhausted. So that is a huge improvement for the retirement system. All right, on to the funded ratio. On the left, you can see not much improvement. Over 20 years, there's really, I think it goes from 56 to 60%. That's nominal. I had barely moving over a 20-year period before the legislation. After the legislation, you can see the significant trajectory upward in the system's funded ratio. And if you're not familiar, the funded ratio is the ratio of assets to liabilities. Obviously, the goal is to reach 100% funding. That's going to take some time. But what we can see here is a major improvement in the long-term funding of the retirement system. Another area that we studied was sensitivity analysis. What that is essentially the actuary programs in different market environments. So say, hey, next year markets are down 20%. What does that do to the retirement system's funded level? Or in 5 years, it dropped 20%. So COAERS had a variety of scenarios run. And you can see on the left side, there's very few where we actually saw any improvement. And most of them was a long-term deterioration of the funded status of the system. With the passage of the legislation, you can see every one of those lines now has an upward trajectory. So we're better positioned if there is a downturn. And unfortunately, the way markets work, there will be a downturn. But the system now has, through its actuarially determined contribution rate, course corrective mechanisms to make sure funding does not deteriorate. And that guarantees that the system is set up long-term to make sure that those benefits that we've talked about all day are there for you when you retire. Cash flow, Dave had touched on this briefly. This is an important component. It's not unusual for mature pension systems to have some negative cash flow. If you're not familiar with that term, what that means is contributions in are less than the benefits we pay out. But that's why we have a trust fund. But if that negative cash flow gets to a point where it's -4 or -5%, that really deteriorates the ability of the system to earn money because you're selling assets at a time when, could be a down market and it's a double whammy. after the passage of the legislation, the cash flow position improved significantly. So if you kind of look in the middle there in like 2032, where it got to -4, -4.2%, instead it's now -2, -2.5. Those are good numbers. About -2, -3 is a pretty standard number for a healthy, mature, defined benefit plan. This additionally allows the retirement system to not take as much money out, which will help improve the long-term returns of the system. So again, this legislation was extremely important for securing the long-term financial health of the retirement system. And again, I can't thank our plan sponsor enough. I spent several years working at the Pension Review Board, where plan sponsors would wait until the plan was literally in the ditch, probably unconscious, before they'd even begin to talk to the retirement system. And at that point, these solutions are drastic. The city of Austin has always been proactive in working with COAERS, and we were able to get this legislation done before we even got to the ditch. And so it's their ability to work with us, which is just, again, I appreciate so much given my history of seeing it the other way, has better positioned COAERS to be able to meet the long-term benefits that you all are earning. So here's the slide I was talking about, where you can actually see the unfunded liability going to zero. And because we are now in an actuarially determined contribution rate policy, we actually know the funding period. So like I said, next year when we present, and I'm sorry, it's really small. I was really just trying to aim it. You can see in December 31, 2053, zero. At that point, the unfunded liability will be exhausted. And that is the first time we can actually stand up here and say, we've got that and we know what the funding period is next year. Next year, it'll be 29 years. The year after that, it'll be 28 years. And that is a best practice. So we finally have the retirement system. I went back and looked this morning, since the 1990s, which was a great time. And, you know, a lot of decisions in public retirement systems were made that maybe weren't the best, you know, looking forward with all the market challenges. But this is the first time we actually can project and know what the funding period is going to be. So that should give you assurance that the retirement system is on strong footing, and those benefits are going to be there for you, whether you're retiring in 5 years or in 25 years. So this is just a quick update on some of the key data points from our last valuation. And again, this is the first valuation we did under the new contribution and benefit policies. So the amortization period is 30 years. Unfortunately, that's where we got to start. We will eventually get it down, but this is a great starting point. Like I said, last year it was at 34 years. So in the course of 1 year, the amortization period improved 4 years. That's a significant improvement for the retirement system. What that also does is it keeps us off the Pension Review Board's watch list. That's the list of retirement systems that have structural issues and may need to do what is called a funding soundness restoration plan. Those were put in place by the legislature because there were so many instances, I told you, where plan sponsors would wait till their plans were in the ditch to actually do anything. One of the solutions was to force plan sponsors and the plans to work together to develop a plan before they hit the ditch. Again, because of the support of the city council and the leadership there, we were able to avoid that and get this problem solved before we actually ended up in that ditch. Dave talked a bit about the investment returns. We have an investment target of 6.75%. So last year was a great year, but 2022 was not. So we still have some deferred losses that we are smoothing into the retirement system, but we're off to a good start this year, knock on wood, and those kind of balance out over time. Additionally, we did take one liability loss. Salary increases were a bit higher than expected at the city, which is a great thing. There's a lot that needs to go on, but it did create a liability loss of about $90 million. Again, though, with the actuarially determined contribution rate, the system is able to absorb that, and that does not impact the long-term funding of the retirement system. So what that means is for 2025, the city contribution rate will be 20.56. And as you probably are all well aware, this is the second year of the member phase-in of the increase up to 10%. So that was kind of the arrangement with the city. Moving to an actuarially determined contribution rate would not be approved by the Texas legislature without some give on the employee side. So working with the city, it was a 2-year phase-in, 1% per year. And so beginning January 1, 2025, the member rate will go to 10%. But as we discussed earlier, all of this is being done to strengthen and ensure that the defined benefit that we have is going to be there for every single person who's working for the city now and into the future. And it's really nice to be able to stand up here and say we have a target where we're going to be 100% funded, and we're going to be in a position to guarantee the long-term financial health of the retirement system. And that was really a combined effort between the city and the board of trustees here to put together a package that would ensure the long-term health of our retirement system. I want to thank you again for your service. It's really an honor to work at COAERS. Everybody here, from the board all the way down to every staff member, we take the mission of the retirement system to provide your promised benefits seriously. It's great to be a part of an organization where every day people get up and they're rowing in the same direction. We take a lot of pride in supporting your retirement benefits because you're the people that make the city great. And so again, thank you very much for your service. And Mr. Vice Chair, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Okay, everyone, we've entered the Q&A section, part of this session today. Over the past few weeks, we've received many great questions from the members, and we really want to thank you for sending those in. We'll be discussing the questions we received ahead of time today first. We'll do our best to get through all the questions. Fear not, if we don't get through your questions, our staff will be available here now and in the future to answer any questions we don't get to today. So some of the questions and the topics we received, they cover a lot of different things, mostly funding, investments, benefits, COLAs, and a few others. But first, let's start with a question over cost of living adjustments. Will there be raises during retirement? Can you share more about the history of cost of living raises to retirees over the last 20 years?
Take that one, if I can figure out how to turn my mic on. All right. Can everybody hear me? All right. So I guess the first part, I'll go to the second part of the question first. There is no history of cost of living adjustments over the last 20 years. I'm sure every retiree is well aware of that. Let me give you a little bit of background on how cost of living adjustments are funded. There's two different ways. One is that there is a pre-funded mechanism built into the plan. What that means is that the contributions that go in pay not just for the actual defined benefit that's calculated via your multiplier, average salary, and length of service, but it also pays for the anticipated cost of living adjustment. That's a pre-funded method. The other method is called ad hoc. Ad hoc is basically if you have additional money and the actuary signs off on it, you can provide one. COAERS was never designed as a pre-funded COLA system. It's an ad hoc system, which means that we're only able to provide a COLA if the system has additional funds and meets the actuarial standards of practice and the Pension Review Board funding guidelines that allow for COLAs. As we discussed, as I just discussed, the long-term funding history of the system has been kind of up and down. We never knew what our funding period was. As I said, I looked back, never once in the last 23 years, I guess since 2001, when the system first went to less than 100% funding, has the retirement system been able to meet those standards. So unfortunately, we have not been able to provide a COLA since 2002. That was the last year we could do it. The legislation that was just passed is the first time we're actually going to be on a trajectory where that could be considered, but that is going to take a long time to get to. I don't want to give people false hope that it's 2 years from now we're going to be able to provide a COLA. We are at 30 years right now. Next year we'll be at 29 years, but actuarial standards of practice really look for about 15-year amortization period to be once you've paid for it to be able to fund a COLA. So right now the focus has been on ensuring we get the retirement system on sound footing. We have a contribution and benefit policy that ensures everybody's retirement benefits are there when they retire. And so that is a great success for us. At some point in the future, we do hope that we are able to provide a cost of living adjustment, but that's just not something we can do.
Thank you, Chris. Next, we have a couple questions over benefits. What makes the deferred compensation retirement benefit from the city better than a private option?
I can take this one. There's a lot to be said. If you recall, today we've talked about your pension plan, your deferred comp plan, social security, and health insurance benefits. So I think we made the point that you're in a better position than most people in the United States to prepare for retirement. So let's focus in on deferred comp. Number one, any employer plan is better than an outside plan simply because of payroll deduction. Payroll deduction is a beautiful thing. You can move that cash from your compensation into the 457 plan and have instant savings, and then obviously compounded with interest in your earnings. So that's number one. Also, the city oversees this plan, so investment options are vetted and the fees are reasonable, they're low, and they're transparent. We talked before, I think Chris mentioned that a lot of people are in plans for which they don't know the fees, and the fees are excessive, and that erodes obviously your ability to save. And then finally, the deferred comp plan offers something extremely unique, which is local support. In fact, there is a financial planner that's free of charge. Her name is Jennifer Preston, and she's available to you free of charge for financial planning services. So those are tremendous benefits on the deferred comp side.
Okay, thank you, Russell. Another question regarding benefits. What should we expect from Medicare when retiring after 65 years of age and never having signed up for Medicare?
And so Medicare is a hot topic. The benefit of turning 65 or being Medicare eligible is that your premiums go down. They're lower. Retiree healthcare prior to Medicare eligibility can be very expensive. So that's point number one. Point number two is you do need to understand how Medicare works, and we're having a seminar here on October 1st, as well as it will be discussed in open enrollment from the city's HRD staff. The Medicare has Part A, which is inpatient hospitalization, Part B, which is basically everything else, which requires a premium, and Part C, which is prescription drug coverage, which can all be very complex. There's also a Medicare Advantage plan, which wraps all of that in with the provider as well. So we have a lot of choices thanks to the city and the Human Resources Department as well. So again, work closely with HRD as a retiree to know your options. Open enrollment is going to occur after the budget's been installed. We have wonderful resources from the city's HRD benefits department. Angelica Williams and her staff do a fantastic job. Angelica's right there. And so catch her and ask her all your Medicare questions after the seminar. And so take advantage of all those resources and understand your options. That's the point here. Pick the best plan that's right for you.
Thank you, Russell. Really appreciate it. Next, we have some questions regarding funding. First, I would like to hear a detailed report on the actuarial evaluation of the retirement fund. Can you share more?
I guess I'll take this since I just gave a report, but let me just kind of reiterate a couple things. First, the funding period is 30 years and is now, the funding policy is an actuarially determined contribution rate, which means that every year going forward, we're going to know the funding period, and the actuary will calculate the actuarial contribution rate necessary to meet that. That is a best practice, and again, want to thank the city for their willingness to step up. That is one of the most important things to ensure that we can keep this defined benefit that we all have, this incredible benefit that we've been talking about today, healthy and financed well into the future. The full valuation report is available on our website. Depending on your level of interest in the actuarial sciences, it may put you to sleep. So if you're having trouble at night and you want to, pick up the valuation, start reading it. That's one option. But a couple other things I'd like to just point out in the valuation report. The funded status of the plan is about 63% right now, but as you can see on the chart I showed you, that's going to improve significantly over the next 20 years. Passage of Senate Bill 1444 is going to ensure that every year over the next 20 years, we're going to work up towards that 80% threshold. Previously, as you saw, there was almost no improvement. So it's tough in the first year with the new legislation. You wanted to just come back and say, all right, we're 90% funded and we've got an amortization period of 10 years. It just doesn't work that way. But the two most important data points from that would be that we have a 30-year amortization and we have an actuarially determined contribution rate. So I'm happy to go in, whoever asked that question, if anybody's interested, we're happy to set up a time to go more in depth into the nuances of actuarial assumptions, if that's your interest. But I'm going to guess from the crowd, that might not be what you want to hear from me right now. So I'll pass it back to you, Mr. Vice Chair.
That was really going to be a fun topic. I was looking forward to it. With talks from Social Security administrators about funding limitations, how does the board ensure City of Austin future retirees will not be in financial trouble?
I guess I'll piggyback off my prior answer. Really, the passage of the legislation was the most significant step to ensure retirees will not be in trouble. The amortization period and that funding period is the most significant data point you take from an actuarial valuation. And it is the trend in that. Like I said, with the little analogy to the wizard, we never knew year to year what the funding period was going to be prior to passage of that legislation. So we couldn't anticipate the direction the retirement system was going. Because of the legislation, we now know year after year the funding is going to improve and eventually reach 100% funded. So you don't have to be 100% funded. Most retirement systems aren't, and they can still continue to pay benefits. However, the fact that we're moving in that direction is an additional assurance to our members and our retirees that your benefits are there and will be there forever. So again, I want to thank the city for all their efforts in doing this. It's a huge success and a really important step in securing the financial health of COAERS into the future.
Thank you, Chris. One last question regarding funding. What happens with my pension if the city sells my business and I have to leave the city?
I'll take this one. These events are significantly stressful for active members. No one wants to get their job pulled out from underneath them. Our advice would be to follow facts. These situations come up from time to time, and a lot of rumors get generated. So follow your HRD, your HR department's instructions, and react to facts. On a sub-bullet on facts is know your retirement numbers. It's always good to understand your retirement vesting date, when you're eligible to retire, and if you perhaps won't have a job in a few months or so, you can put that in our calculator on Member Direct or come visit us and find out what your numbers are going to be. You can also find out what your contribution balances are as well. So this is a good time, no matter how worried you are about the situation in your department, to know your retirement numbers. And finally, if these kinds of events occur, we have experts in this field. We have done this before for departments in our careers here and other careers. And what we will do is counsel you one-on-one about your decisions. Everybody's decision is a little bit different, but it sort of rhymes like this. You can vest your benefits and draw your pension in the future, which we would recommend, or you can withdraw your contributions. Unfortunately, it will extinguish your annuity in the future, so that's a bad thing. But you can roll those contributions over to another employer plan if you'd like. We can help you do that. So those are my comments in that situation.
Thank you, Russell. All right, we have one last question, and it covers investments. How does the investment performance of the COAERS pension fund rate relative to the performance of other pension funds?
I'll take that one. Peer relative performance is an interesting topic, and one, as our trustees will know, that we've discussed quite a bit here at our investment committee recently. I'll note that peer comparisons can be challenging to get apples to apples comparisons, both on defining who COAERS's peers actually are and the availability of net of fees returns. So given COAERS's larger exposure to public markets relative to other public pension plans, peer performance tends to vary quite a bit depending on how well public market strategies fare relative to private market strategies. For example, in 2023, public equities rallied while private markets stalled on a relative basis. As a result, accounting for fees, the returns of the fund earned in 2023 likely ranked just near the top quartile of the year relative to similarly sized public pension funds, those of $1 to $5 billion in assets. Over the longer term and looking at a broader data set, over the trailing 10 years, this dynamic is somewhat different. And private markets have outperformed public markets slightly. Looking at the broadest peer set of all public pensions and accounting for average fee levels, COAERS has had peer returns that are near to but slightly below median, which is reasonable to expect given our overall structure.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. That ends the Q&A session for the pre-submitted questions. Are there any live Q&A from the audience today? Yeah, 5 minutes per Russell, not me. So blame this way, okay? Anybody at all? No pressure. If you got none.
The medical. I heard that it's
the payment for medical goes down the longer you're with, city?
Yes, there is a subsidy that's based upon your years of service. For example, the highest subsidy for insurance is at 20 years. It's roughly 75 to 80% of your premium will be taken care of. And it decreases subsidy decreases based upon the lower amount of service revenue. One of the benefits is having insurance as a retiree, and the other is it's mostly subsidized at the 20-year level.
Thank you for your question.
Follow up on that, spouses can get that get that insurance benefit as well, right?
That's true. Yes, your spouse is eligible, and if you go on the HRD's website, you can see the plan document this year. You can see all of the rates prior to Medicare, all the tier levels who you want to cover, as well as after Medicare as well.
Does that include spouses too?
Yes, it does. Yep, and family.
Great question. Thank you.
Medicare Advantage, is it primary or secondary?
It's primary. So Medicare Advantage is a total package where you're just dealing with your insurance carrier like Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and you go see the doctors that are in the network and they take care of everything for you.
Thank you for the question. Anybody else? Still got a few more minutes for Russell, just to let you know. So we got some time. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm not Medicare eligible yet, but the Medicare Advantage, is that like a PPO or an HMO? How does it factor in if you're traveling or you go somewhere and stay a few months in another state?
It's a great question. So it's going to vary. And so that's an open enrollment kind of question. And that's exactly what you should be doing, is comparing plans on the network and the cost, and not just the cost, because you do want to travel and you do want to have coverage. So that's my advice is we'll get the budget installed in August. Open enrollment period will start. Come to the events that HRD creates and ask that very question.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, that concludes our Q&A segment for today. I want to thank everyone for the pre-submitted and the live questions. It's very thoughtful, very appreciative. Just to let everybody know, the recording of today's event, the presentation materials, and the questions we discussed are going to be available on the COAERS website.
That concludes the 2024 City of Austin Employees Retirement System Member Summit.